what we do here is go back.
What's happening, YouTube? Jeff Robbins here. Welcome back. So, gonna finish up the dyno build in this one. Left off the last video with a couple issues with the load cell, vibrations, and some issues with the data results. So, we're gonna show you how we fix that up. But before we get into that, I wanted to give a huge shout out to a subscriber and my new friend Adam. He reached out. He probably saw that Fisher Price torque arm I was trying to use, and he went ahead and he machined me up this brand new aluminum torque arm. Absolutely beautiful workmanship on it. So this is what I'm going to get installed on the dyno. So when I was talking to him, he actually asked me if I had any run out in my pump as well, and coincidentally I was actually working on that. So with my old adapter, the pump was kind of going like this ever so slightly. And he also offered to go ahead and he machined up this new adapter as well. Absolutely beautiful, machined out of aluminum. So this is actually going to sit over the top of my pump now, like this. Let's see if I can get this on here one-handed. So that's going to go on the pump like that. And then torque arm will sit on here just like that. Absolutely awesome setup. So Adam, I can't thank you enough. He's actually building his own dyno. Here's a couple pictures right here. So if you want to build your own dyno, guys, it's definitely doable. Just a little bit of investment, but if it's something that you've wanted, it's not that far out of reach. You can build one yourself and you don't got to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a professional setup. You can make something yourself. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get out on the dyno. I'm gonna get all this stuff installed, and then we'll do a couple dyno pulls, and we'll go back and look at the data, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about how I'm gonna display my data going forward. So there it is, guys. Let's get out on the dyno. Alright guys, so we got everything installed, ready to go ahead and throw an engine on here and do some dyno pulls and we can check some data. So I did throw a new axle in here. There was still a little bit of run out, and if you were wondering why I was cutting that axle that way, it was a pretty good question because I definitely got a big blister trying to cut the axle that way, so definitely don't follow the way I did that. But I've got the arm installed, ready to go. So a couple new things that I wanted to show you. So I've got some switches down here. I've got an engine fan. And then I've also got the oil cooling fan. Got both of those hooked up, ready to go. So alright guys, let's get an engine on here. Let's do some pulls and check some data. Okay guys, so the part I've been looking forward to is the data results. So this is the little dyno session that you saw in the video. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. I did 3 dyno pulls. So we'll zoom in here on the dyno pulls at the end. And there's my 3 pulls. So since the last video, I've gotten a new load cell. So the one I had before was a 20 kg. I've upgraded that to a 50 kg load cell. And in the interim, I've also reached out to a do-it-yourself group online to figure out what was going on with my data results. And because I have a gear ratio, because I'm using a sprocket and a chain, I've got to apply that gear ratio to my results, and that's something I was missing in my math channels in the last video, so I've got to apply that as well. So let's go ahead and let's zoom in here on the first one. We'll look at all three just to see the consistency between them. But we'll go ahead and zoom in here. Show you my math channels that I've created. So here's the load cell. So what it's doing is it's taking the reading from that sensor. And that sensor is a 5-volt sensor, so it outputs millivolts, 0 to 5,000. It's a 50 kg load cell, so every 100 millivolts is going to equal 1 kg. So I divide the output by 100, times that by 2.2, and that's going to give me my foot-pounds output. I take that reading, and then this is where I'm applying my gear ratio. So I've got a 16 front drive and a 53 rear sprocket, so that's a 3.3125 gear ratio. So I'm having to divide the output by that gear ratio. And then what I'm doing is I'm using those results, timesing that by the RPM, dividing by 5252, and that gives us our horsepower. So let's go ahead and pull up those channels. We'll pull up the load cell torque and the load cell horsepower. So peak torque came in at 8.67 foot-pounds, and peak horsepower came in at 7.24 horsepower. And you might be thinking to yourself, that's a little low. Well, that's because this is the actual output of my dyno. So what most guys do is they get their actual output and then they apply a correction factor. And that's what everyone does with a dyno, just because your actual results, unless you have a perfect environment, they're going to be down. So you've got to apply that correction factor. So say, for example, a Briggs engine is supposed to be 8.8 horsepower. My correction factor I would need to apply would need to bring this up to 8.8 horsepower. So with that in mind, what I plan on doing when I use my dyno going forward is I'm going to just use my actual results. I'm not going to apply a correction factor. I may apply one for videos, just because if someone doesn't see this video, they're not going to know that I don't apply a correction factor. And the reason I'm not going to, because I also found a guy talking about correction factors, and he was saying if your correction factor is anything over 7%, that your results are going to be inconsistent, and my correction factor is going to need to be anywhere between 15 and 25%. So that's why I've decided I'm just going to use my actual results. And with my pressure sensor, I did have a correction factor applied. I was applying it to the flow rate of the pump to get the results I needed, and I just went back through and calculated it, and it's about 21% correction factor I had applied to my flow rate, so that my results were showing what Briggs say they should show. So just want to keep that in mind, guys. On any of my future videos, there will be a correction factor applied to my results. So here's the first poll. We got 8.67, 7.24. Let's take a look at this next one real quick. See how consistent this load cell is. All right. Looks like peak torque came in at 8.61, and peak horsepower was 7.23, so actually real consistent. Let's take a look at the last one. Peak torque 8.58, peak horsepower 7.24. Yeah, man, so that load cell is amazingly consistent. I'm extremely happy with those results. And you know, I've also got the lambda on here. I want to do some more testing. I think that if I can get this lambda leaned out a little bit more, I think I can get this horsepower up, because in my opinion this is still rich. And as far as Briggs carb settings go, this thing's set up lean, but these results are still definitely rich. And then I've also got the block temperature And then I've actually also got the oil temperature of my dyno now as well. So these are all the different data points that I'm collecting from my dyno. So there you have it, guys. That new load cell is extremely consistent. I'm happy with those results. These are the results without the correction factor. Just keep that in mind. So going forward, if these results, it's going to be 8.8, 8.9 horsepower, I've definitely applied a correction factor. But there you have it, guys. There's the dyno with the new load cell. Extremely good results. All right, fellas, so here it is. Dyno build is officially complete, ready for production. So the two biggest upgrades obviously was the new frame, which is absolutely amazing, and floating the pump, which has been a huge upgrade, and I think it's going to be extremely beneficial as far as the data goes. I can't wait to get into some testing and see if I can get some better results than I had with that pressure sensor. The only thing I'd really like to change is getting a thicker plate here. I still get a lot of vibrations even with that plate that I'm using underneath, at least for 206s. Two strokes there's no vibrations at all. It's absolutely perfect for two strokes. But with the 206, I still get quite a bit of vibrations. But there it is, guys. It's officially complete. I'm extremely happy with everything, how everything's turned out. So I'm going to go back through, now that I have the load cell, I'm going to redo my lash videos. I'm going to see if we can get some better results with the load cell. And you guys have also given me some good ideas, so I'm actually going to do some magneto gap testing. So we'll test changing the gap, the air gap between the flywheel. And someone else also wants me to test moving the silencer up and down here on the header, see if that makes any changes, so we might as well do that. And anything else you guys can think of, let me know. We'll test it, see if we can get this thing figured out. But there it is, guys. Extremely happy. So as always, I definitely appreciate you guys for tuning in. Plan your race, race your plan, have a good time at the track.